Sorry if you're just joining us right now. We've been recording for a while, but this is Marley.
And Mandy.
And our show is called Hitbox, and right now we're talking about the game Life is Strange on our first episode where we're talking about choice-based games. So we're going to just keep going where we are.
Yeah, I'm gonna explain what I just said because I was really frazzled. But, Life is Strange is advertised as a choice-based game. And it's just very, I don't know how to feel about it. I want to like Life is Strange so badly. However, it alludes the whole time that your best friend Chloe is the reason for all the chaos happening in the town, and each choice that you make is supposed to alter the gameplay, even though it really doesn't that much. It's mostly just about knowledge of the player rather than actual gameplay. But it alludes this whole time that Chloe is supposed to die because she gets near death, and you save her every single time. And at the end, you make a choice, and the choice is either to save Chloe or to let her die, and you know at this point that if you let her die, all the chaos will stop in the town, but that's the bad ending, because then you don't have Chloe in your life, and it's just, I feel like it gives you mixed messages. Because then the good ending is basically you ride off into the sunset, and even though the tornado destroyed everything, you're happy, which I think is really weird.
Yeah, I think the game overall has pretty poor writing.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, but I think, you mentioned this earlier when we were talking about it, but how it feels like the game devs they've made a game that they had in mind, like, oh, all these choices will affect the ending, and it'll be this great branching sort of narrative.
Yeah.
And then they sat down and thought, oh, wait, we want people to play the game.
Yeah.
Which is a big issue with choice-based games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you choose one way, you're not ever supposedly going to get to play the other way unless you decide to quit and start over.
Right. And that's the thing, too, is that I have issues with games like these that influence your decision heavily. They give you the illusion of choice, but the game makes sure to let you know that one of them is the wrong answer, which it really bothers me, because if it's advertised as a choice-based game, you should be able to make choices that you yourself are comfortable with.
Yeah, or you could regret.
Yeah, or you can regret.
Part of making choices.
Exactly. So that's why I'm kind of bummed about Life is Strange, because it advertises itself as, like, you know, very butterfly effect. Every choice that you do will ultimately affect the outcome of the game, and it just really doesn't. Yeah, I don't know.
Kind of building off of that, Until Dawn is interesting because it also advertises itself as that, and theoretically the choices you make in that game do really affect the way the game is played, and literally affects what characters make it out. But also on that front, the ending doesn't really change. It just depends on who you get, which character in the game finishes with you.
Yeah, it's an interesting mechanic, because with Until Dawn, you know, you play the game and you have the ability to save theoretically everyone, and it is difficult to save everyone.
Which I was not able to do.
No, it's pretty hard. I mean, which is, you know, an interesting mechanic. Like, if you're good at the game, it rewards you by being able to save the players. And it, you know, they have this game is so dependent on, like, writing and making you want to save the characters, because if you didn't want to save the characters, you just wouldn't. So it tries to give you that little reward system of, like, oh, if you play our game and you're good at it, you will succeed in this game. And the ending is interesting in that way, because the more people you have, the easier it is to beat the ending. And I think that that's interesting, but I also dislike the fact that Until Dawn advertises itself as a choice-based game because the ending doesn't change. But I don't know.
Yeah, Until Dawn is also a kind of peculiar example because you switch between players.
Yeah.
So it's a little confusing, and there's other games like this, like Telltale games do this occasionally, where there'll be two main characters. But yeah, in Until Dawn, you switch between the characters, and what you're doing with one character does affect what you do with another player, but it can be kind of confusing. I found that game a little hard for me to focus on, and I don't think I even finished it. I think I played part of it and then watched the rest online.
Yeah, it's a game. Actually, this brings up an interesting point too, but it's very much a game that is made for Let's Plays.
Oh, totally. And the Let's Plays of Until Dawn are more fun to watch than playing the game.
Yeah, 100%.
If you played Until Dawn, it's super grisly.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know, like...
You feel nasty after making some of those decisions.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I haven't never played Until Dawn. I've only watched playthroughs of it for that same reason. I also don't have any consoles that it works on, but like...
I do.
You know, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. That one.
Yeah, I think, and this also comes back to something else we're going to touch on, which is the marketing idea that choice-based games add replay value. So, like Life is Strange and Until Dawn, well, maybe you didn't get the good ending, or you didn't save all the characters you wanted to, but maybe that gives you the opportunity to play the game again. But I don't know about you, I don't really replay games. I mean, I'll replay certain kinds of games.
Yeah.
But if I went through, like, whatever, 60 hours, not 60, that's crazy. Unless it's Persona, that's crazy.
Oh my god.
If I went through, like, even, like, 10 hours of a game and worked really hard and got a certain ending, I'm not necessarily going to want to jump in and try to get a different ending, especially if it's a branching narrative and has multiple endings.
Yeah. No, totally. I think that I'm in the same vein. I mean, I like replaying certain kinds of games, but I don't ever replay choice-based games, actually, because I feel...
exhausting.
It's exhausting. And the thing about choice-based games is that they're almost universally writing heavy, and, you know, especially if a game like Life is Strange or Until Dawn, you know, the core story doesn't change in either of those games. So why would I want to replay the same game, just with slightly different effects?
Yeah.
Like, there's no point. So the whole replay value thing is very interesting because, you know, yeah, you can replay and get different options and get different choices, but at the end of the day, you're playing the same game.
Playing the same game with different characters.
Yeah, which, I mean, if the characters aren't interesting, then
it's worth it, maybe.
Yeah.
This kind of also leads into, is there such a thing as a good choice-based game? And also our next topic, which is going to be choice versus freedom. I'm going to link those two with Fallout New Vegas. I don't traditionally think of this game as a choice-based game, and I'm choosing this particular one in the Fallout series because I think it exemplifies choices better than 4 and 3, which are the other two I've played. But in Fallout New Vegas, theoretically every choice you make in quest lines that are attached to the main quest, or even ones that are just attached to things that are also attached to the main quest, affects the final decision. And the final decision you make in the game is drastically different from the other 3, or I think it's 3 final decisions. So Fallout New Vegas is a really interesting game. For example, like the first quest when you wake up, you can either decide to help Good Springs, or you can decide to help the bandits who are attacking Good Springs. And that alone will pretty much affect the way you play the rest of the game, theoretically. It's kind of like a D&D system. Like, am I going to be good? Am I going to be bad? And the way different factions see you will affect the way they see you in the end when you're literally making a choice about which faction to back in this nationwide, or I guess it's only the West-wide
I haven't played
war.
Fallout New Vegas, but this is...
I'm going to avoid ranting about it because it's my favorite game of all time. But another thing about Fallout New Vegas is you can change at any time. Like, even as by something as simple as putting on a disguise, which I think is hilarious. But in that sense, it's almost the perfect choice-based game for me because you're making choices that can affect the ending and will affect the ending, but you're not, and you do face consequences for that. Like, if you choose to poison one town, they're gonna hate you for it. But maybe the boss type villain that you happened across 10 minutes ago, maybe they're gonna love you and help you later on, and you can walk through their camps without getting hurt. But you can do things that change that, and they have sort of like a hidden karma system, and I think that's really interesting. And I also think it's fascinating that it's this enormous RPG world that you could theoretically never finish and never play the main quest at all and never even touch any of the choices in it. But once you make that final choice, the game ends.
Yeah.
And I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a prime example of that same kind of mechanic is Breath of the Wild. I mean, everyone loved that game when it came out because, well, first of all, it's visually incredible. But also, you can just beat Ganon. Like, you can just go to him.
I wish they let me do that in Phantom Hourglass.
Literally, Phantom Hourglass is so hard. Yeah, with Breath of the Wild, I mean, I think Breath of the Wild is like, I mean, sue me, but like it's the perfect game. Like there is nothing wrong with Breath of the Wild. I think it is the perfect game.
I've played 10 minutes of Breath of the Wild because I do not own a Switch yet, but I would agree with that statement.
No, I mean, like, okay, here's the thing. It throws you onto this, like, the Great Plateau, okay? It throws you onto this world, and it takes forever for you to get the paraglider. That's why speedruns of this game are actually quite long, typically. But after you get off of the Great Plateau, you can just go to Ganon's castle and beat him. That doesn't mean that it won't be hard.
Or that you'll succeed.
Yeah, you will probably not succeed. You have, like, people have tried to do this, like, straight out of the bat, and you usually can't. You usually have to get some sort of armor, some sort of level up to even come close.
But you have the choice.
But you have the choice! And that's the thing about Breath of the Wild, is that it's so beautiful. There's so much content. And I think that that is really a game that shines and succeeds because it makes you want to play the game. There's nothing fun about beating Breath of the Wild. You don't play Breath of the Wild so you can beat it.
That's the way I feel personally about Fallout and Elder Scrolls games too. I just don't see the appeal in beating a game that's gonna end as soon as I beat it when there's so much to do inside of it.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I mean, I've talked to my brother about this quite a bit because we've both played Breath of the Wild a couple times each. But
which brother should do a shout out?
Vince, he's hopefully listening. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, both of us have played Breath of the Wild a couple times, and both of us, as soon as we get towards the ending when there's kind of nothing else to do, we always tell each other we get so sad. Like, because, you know, you just want it to keep continuing, and there's so much content in this game. You can easily play it for, like, hundreds of hours and not run out of anything to do. But, you know, it gives you the choice, which I think is a really good, I don't know, it's like a good game mechanic because you can beat it, but the game really makes it so that you don't want to.
Yeah, and I mean, games that also do that. I don't want to be too much of like Bethesda's fanboy here, but like Skyrim and Oblivion, Elder Scrolls games are super interesting to me because they do always have this overarching main quest, and this also goes back to Morrowind, that really affects the game world and the way people regard you and the NPCs within the world and even what the world looks like in Oblivion. Like if you walk around and see a Gate of Oblivion, you haven't beaten the main quest. But I remember beating Oblivion main quest once, and it was super boring. Like, what are you gonna do after that? Even the main quest, like, itself was boring. Like, there's so many there's a different quest in Oblivion where you can go into a painting and defeat trolls with turpentine. I'm not in fine art. Turpentine.
No.
That's the best quest in Oblivion. Subjectively. And why would I want to go into a Hellgate and then end the game?
True.
I mean, theoretically, you could walk around and do nothing after that, but like that doesn't appeal to me at all. So I like the idea of choice-based games. Again, that give you the choice whether you want to play the game or not, the way it's intended, and let you shape the experience of the game.
Well, I think, you know, kind of going back to, like, the Zelda world, a lot of them are very restrictive in the way that, you know, you go through a cave, and then you, like, solve the puzzles, and then you get an object, and then, you know, you move on to the next thing. But another game that I wanted to bring up was Link Between Worlds, which is super interesting because you don't really make choices in that game, but there are either 4 or 5 sections that you do have to beat before you beat the entire game. And it lets you choose whichever one you want to go to first, which I think is a really subtle way to kind of give the player agency.
Especially in a franchise where all the agency is sort of... I mean, in Zelda games, you don't really have a lot of agency. Even your dialogue is chosen for you because you don't speak. Yeah,
that's a good point. And the thing about Link Between Worlds is, you know, it kind of... It gives you the choice of kind of going wherever you want to make your own game within the game. You know, building your own experience is basically what I'm trying to say. The game is laid out for you. The game is finite. It has a beginning and an end, and it has middle parts, but you get to choose which order the middle parts are. And I think that gives the illusion of freedom, even though it's not, which I think is really interesting. Because it makes the player think that they're in control of the journey they're having, which is kind of the whole point of Zelda.
And I think that's what makes these 4 games you've mentioned really great games.
Yeah.
Because like you really are shaping the game you're playing, partially based on choices you make within the game. Like, are you going to be rude to that? You know, I forgot the term for someone who sells stuff. Merchant. To that merchant.
Barter.
Barter.
But bard.
You know, and you make choices within the game that affect things like NPCs and what the game world looks like. But like, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And you cannot do any of those things and still play a perfectly enjoyable game.
Totally. I completely agree. Well, the next little subject that we're going to talk about is subtle choices that enhance gameplay but don't create it. And the first one that I wanted to talk about was Night in the Woods. Night in the Woods is amazing. I love that game.
I still have not played it.
Oh man,
which makes all my friends angry at me.
No, it's so good though. But in Night in the Woods, it's a great game because it doesn't advertise itself as being choice based. But you do make kind of subtle choices in the game in order to kind of explore the world they've created. And what I love about this game is that we were talking a little bit earlier about replay value. How that, you know, if you have this game that has really interesting, sometimes poor writing, and it's, you know, basically the same game but with different choices that don't change the game, you don't really want to replay it. But the thing about Night in the Woods is that I could probably replay that game a bunch of times and still love it, even though it's a very similar story, because of the types of choices they allow you to make.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, there's a story, and, you know, you go throughout that story for a while, and you have 3 friends, Angus, Bee, and Greg, and at a certain point in the game, after you've kind of reconnected with them since you've been away from the town for a while, you get to pick who you get to hang out with. And that's the only choice that you make in that game, is that you just pick who you want to hang out with. And
it's the only choice you make in life.
That's true.
Damn,
but
you're right.
It's true. And I love that because the whole game is kind of about May, the main character's, you know, mental health issues. And her friends are really what, you know, brings her up when she's feeling down. And so the fact that you get to choose who you get to hang out with really changes the game. And it changes a little bit of the ending, which I won't spoil, mostly because I don't really remember. But it's been a while. But it does change which character, which friend, does something special in the end. It's whoever you hang out with the most. And Greg and Bee were really your closest friends, and Angus you only get one opportunity to hang out with because he's just Greg's boyfriend. But that's actually why I was drawn to Angus so much, is because I don't know anything about him, so I was like, of course, why, who wouldn't pick him, you know?
Man of mystery.
Yeah, no, and then, you know, the whole quest with him is that you just go stargazing. And, like, that's the most beautiful part of that game for me, because...
But you don't get to fight painting trolls.
What?
Like, you don't get to fight any trolls in painting.
No.
Cancelled. Go ahead. Continue.
Incorrect. No, but, like, I don't know. Like, just that whole scene with Angus, you know, you don't know him very well. He's, you know, you and Greg used to be really close, but now that he's living with Angus, he has this whole other person in his life that he's devoted to other than you. And so it's really interesting getting to know Angus and getting to spend time with him one-on-one, because he's one of those gentle giant types where he doesn't talk a lot, but he's very sweet. And I don't know, like, that part was just, like, one of the most beautiful parts of that game for me.
I mean, even without having played this game, I think this is just an example of games that are well written enough and well designed enough that they're able to simulate friendship.
Mm-hmm.
It's still technically a choice-based game, but you're not actively feeling like you're clicking A or B. It's just simulating the way you actually do go about your life and the way you actually do talk to people, which
no, totally,
I think is a much more valid way of making a choice-based game, rather than just like, will I go left or will I go right? And if I go left, this person dies, and if I go right, this person dies. Which I think that's weird. It's a weird, false, I don't know, like, completely even though, okay, games are not meant to be real. But
I was just gonna
even
say,
then, I lose some of the sort of, like, immersive experience when it's when it's that black and white.
Yeah, which actually is really interesting because something like Until Dawn, you know, the motion capture in that game is crazy.
It's creepy.
It looks so realistic, and you know, game companies do that to make it more realistic, to make it more immersive or whatever.
L.A. Noire. Very bad and careful.
But I think that Night in the Woods is a much more immersive game than Until Dawn, and Night in the Woods is a cartoon style game. It, you know, it looks nothing like real life, and everyone's an animal. Like, but for me, it simulates, like, you know, real human relationships way better than Until Dawn. And I'm not saying that it needs to, but everyone likes something different. But at the same time, it's a much more effective game for me because, you know, it's real. I mean, you feel things from it. It makes you emotional.
Yeah, I think that's actually a funny. It's funny to talk about this two together because they're both kind of about friendship in a weird way.
Yeah.
Until Dawn, you're
and
playing
they're both
this group
horror
of friends.
games, technically.
Well, you're playing as this group of friends. But when I was playing Until Dawn, everyone was such a stereotype, and I know that's the point of the game. It was supposed to like poking fun at it, but it made me not really care about it.
Yeah, I don't care about any of the characters.
Yeah, if one person was gone, it was just like, oh, there's a different dynamic now. And not I haven't played Night in the Woods, but the idea that you can nurture these friendships instead of just watch them happen is interesting
exactly.
to me.
No, totally. And the great thing about Night in the Woods that I will mention before we move on is, you know, the friends that you don't choose to hang out with don't like you any less. They are just your friends, and you just didn't choose to hang out with them. They don't acknowledge it. They just maybe know you a little less.
That's life, babe.
Which is just how life works. I mean, your friends shouldn't hang out with you all the time because you can, you know. You choose different friends to hang out with every day, and the ones that you hang out with more, you get to know better. That's just how life works, which I think is really subtle and very effective in that game.
Let's talk about getting to know people in games and how that enhances gameplay.
Oh my god, okay.
Telltale Games is where we're going to go with this.
Yeah. And I've played The Wolf Among Us.
And I've played Tales from the Borderlands,
and
which
we
are
both
very...
have not played that other.
Yes. I've read the comics The Wolf Among Us is based on. Telltale Games are really interesting. They're heavily advertised as choice-based games, and they really are choice-based games, but the one game I've played, which is Tales from the Borderlands, from them, you can't really affect what happens.
Yeah.
Your choices affect let me figure out how to word this. This is complicated. Your choices affect who you're with when that happens to you.
Yeah. I think that's a Telltale game thing, because that's exactly what happens in The Wolf Among Us as well.
Why don't you talk about The Wolf Among Us for a while, and then I'll jump into Tales from the Borderlands.
Yeah, so, it's been a minute. It's been more like 5 years.
5 minutes.
It's been 5 whole minutes since I've played The Wolf Among Us. So the plot points I'm very iffy about. But what I do remember is that...
we did research, I promise.
What I do remember is that, you know, The Wolf Among Us is very interesting. Because just like Marley said, you know, the same plot points hit and story beats are the same throughout the entire game. I do believe the outcome is slightly different depending on what you choose, but I can't quite remember. If it is, it's not drastically different. But it like the things happen with different people basically. Yeah, I mean maybe that's it for now for Wolf Among Us. But I can't not talk about this game without mentioning Glass Hymn.
Okay, Glass. Well, Tales of the Borderlands is probably my favorite game that isn't Fallout New Vegas of all time. And I think part of that
I sanctify my game likings to whether or not they're in Fallout New Vegas.
Oh man. Well, they both have robots in them.
True.
Tales of the Borderlands, what makes it, well, A, the best Borderlands game, but B, for me, one of the best games I've ever played, is the characters are all objectively horrible people.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, if you play a lot of the Borderlands games, you're still kind of the good guys, but you're not playing good people. I mean, Tales from the Borderlands, you're playing as 2 people. You play as Reese and you play as Fiona. Reese is a corporate jackass, and Fiona is a thief con artist. I lean towards Fiona in terms of who I like more because her story is more immediately sympathetic. But the truth is, you really learn to love these characters through being them and through making choices through them. Because you can make the decision to be a total idiot And the game is still great, and it still has these great emotional moments in it.
Man.
Like you can literally choose to miss quick time events that'll just make you look dumb.
That's
I don't
really
know. I feel
funny.
like I just love that. I love the idea that, yeah, if I miss this
It's a
quick
game
time event,
that
I'll punch myself in the
Lets you
face.
be imperfect.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect way to describe Tales from the Borderlands. Because the characters are bad people generally at the start. But through interacting with each other, and it's weird because you're technically interacting with yourself in a lot of ways. They learn from each other and they grow with each other, and you learn it's this found family thing where you learn to really love everyone in the game. Partially because, I mean, you can just really shape your relationship with them. You can choose, when you're Reese, you can choose whether you want to, have a crush on Sasha, who's Fiona's little sister, or not. You can choose whether to be nice to Loaderbot and Gortys and the other robots or not. You can choose to listen to, okay, huge spoiler alert here, sorry, Handsome Jack or not. Don't listen to Handsome Jack. Don't be that person. But anyway, and those decisions don't change the ending, but they really change the way you play the game and how people talk to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the end of the day, I mean, you don't. Theoretically, I believe, in every single case of every single game, you should not play a game to beat the game. You should play a game to have an experience.
But yeah, the thing about Tales from the Borderlands is there's two endings. So the big ending that people think of is you destroy Hyperion, and again, I did give you a spoiler warning. And you're not going to change the ending whether or not you listen to Handsome Jack or not, whether or not you made nice with Fiona, whether or not Fiona did this differently or left this person behind, or if you're still going to end up with guilt as both characters, and your good characters are going to hate each other, and Hyperion is gone. But the decisions you made leading up to that affect the second ending, which is where you get to choose which kind of, not random, but side characters that you at one point traveled with or interacted with. You get to choose which one of them to complete the final mission with. And that's really special.
That's sweet.
Because it's like, who did you make friends with?
Well, that's very similar to Night in the Woods.
Yeah, it is. It's who you made friends with. Like Athena, who's the character you travel with for the most amount of time. Really iconic. Just greatest lesbian I know. And like, if you're not super nice to her and her girlfriend, she maybe doesn't want to go with you. Or if you didn't say the right thing to Zero, they're not gonna want to go with you. And if you kill the dude, he's not gonna be on your team. His little icon's gonna be shaded out on that choose screen.
No.
But there's also a secret character you can unlock based on like very specific dialogue choices.
Oh man.
Which I think is a cool way to take. Okay, we're not going to change the ending of this game because it needs to be this way for the canon of this series. But we can change who you experience it with.
Yeah, which is really cool. And I think that you mentioned something earlier about, how everyone's kind of not a good person.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like maybe that's just a Telltale thing. Because that's how everyone is in The Wolf Among Us. Everyone sucks. Everyone's evil. Everyone's either a capitalist or, like, a bad person. I mean, you play as a cop. Like, literally you pay it, like, I mean, he's a detective, but, like, he's a cop. Mm-hmm. And he, like, sometimes he kills people. Sometimes he kills people you don't want to kill. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know, it's very interesting playing a game where you're supposed to be the good guy, but you're not a good person.
Yeah, that's the thing. And if you played other Borderlands games, you kind of have choices, but especially the pre-sequel's interesting to me because if you didn't play on any of the other Borderlands games and you play the pre-sequel and you're playing as Jack or with Jack, it's really devastating to learn that you're not the good guy at the end. Like, you've been playing this game for the whole time and you're the bad guy. And I think Tales from the Borderlands does a good job of kind of reversing that, where you're playing as these people who keep conning people and stealing stuff or climbing up the corporate ladder and being mean to their friends and using people. But you have to play as them learning how to be good people.
Yeah,
and
that's
even though
interesting.
It's a really dark game.
That's totally how Wolf Among Us is too.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about this a lot and think about it a lot, but morality in gaming is very interesting because, especially with Telltale games, it seems, you want to make choices that are good because people, like to assume that they're inherently good people.
Mm-hmm.
And even though these characters are deeply flawed sometimes,
Yeah.
you want them to make good choices, and you kind of see them grow over time. I mean, the main character in the beginning of Wolf Among Us sucks. He's a jerk, and he is like really mean to people, and he's gone around policing people literally. And he's not nice to people because he doesn't have to be. He's a lone wolf, literally. That's his character. He's a lone wolf. And he doesn't think that he needs anyone. But I mean, it's that old, that trope that, he learns that he needs people in his life to succeed.
Well, yeah, again, this goes back to the title of this, literally the title of this segment. Subtle choices that enhance gameplay but don't create it. No matter what, you're going to have to do a kind of hacky QuickTime event to see whether an electrified rod goes through your eye or not. But you can also decide whether you're just going to hang out with people and play games, or who you're going to chat with, and maybe then you get to raid a vault with them later.
Yeah.
But we touched on this a little bit, but karma in games is something else that can really affect gameplay but not create
Karma definitely affects Wolf Among Us. Like, glass him.
Glass him.
I will never stop talking about glass him. If you guys don't know what glass him is, it's this choice in Wolf Among Us that everyone... You're having this conversation with this, really shitty dude. And you're trying to get information out of him, basically. So you're trying to get him drunk, actually, and, talk to him so he can give you information. You're being nice to him, even though you really hate him. And there's this, after you had a little conversation with him, it's been kind of nice, you have this option of whether or not to say something, or it says, in brackets, glass him.
Which is the most mysterious dialogue option you could possibly have.
Which, if you're a normal person, would mean give him a good old clink. Give him a clink on the glass.
Sorry. Glass him does not mean clink in any sense of the word.
Okay, well, tell that to the entire internet, because everyone thought that, you were just going to give him a little glass clink,
Open my Twitter account for doing this.
But, obviously, you smash him on the head with the glass instead. And that's maybe poor writing, but it's also hilarious.
Well, in games, I'm more drawn to karma systems that are built into the game without you necessarily seeing them.
Yeah.
Like in Fallout, factions and whatnot. And that's kind of a layered system where if you do one good thing, you're kind of disliked. If you do if you do one bad thing, you're kind of disliked. If you do another bad thing, your reputation gets worse and worse and worse until they will literally kill you on sight.
Yeah.
But then there's games where karma is the main game mechanic, almost like the Infamous series, which we're not really going to go into that much because I've only played one of them. I've watched the other ones.
I know nothing about it. I don't know what it is.
They're really fascinating games.
I have no idea what this is.
Well, in the Infamous games, basically, you always play as a character. First two, you play the same character. In the third one, you're a different character. Where you have gained these powers, and the government doesn't like that you have those powers.
Yeah.
It's just okay. I don't want to say X-Men ripoff, but at this point, everything. Anyway.
Everything's an X-Men ripoff.
But you can go around. You can write that one down. You go around and you complete quests just like any other game, but how you complete the quests and how you treat civilians and how you treat your friends and in Second Son, your brother or whatever, affects your karma rating. I'm not sure if that's what they directly call it in the game, but it's literally a bar. And your outfit changes.
Wait, really?
Yeah, you get a different patch on the back of your jacket.
That's really funny, actually.
I mean, it's okay.
I think that's hilarious.
It bothers me a little bit though, because in the cutscenes you're still the same person.
What do you mean?
You can be yelling and screaming and harassing civilians and jumping off of buildings in Seattle and whatever you want to do.
Okay.
And then in the cutscenes you're still like, it's wrong to imprison people for their powers, and it's like, okay,
I
but
see.
you just threw lightning at a guy on the street. So it's weird. You're just wearing a slightly different outfit.
So that's poor writing.
Yeah, so
it doesn't actually...
They're good games. I actually really enjoy them. But that's an example for me where karma systems in games don't make any sense. I mean, that could make sense if they thought it through more.
Right. Also, I don't know. I mean, in real life, no one has a bar for how much they dislike you.
If I drop a coffee on someone, my outfit doesn't change.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think one last little bit about the subtle choices that can enhance gameplay is because I mean we've been talking about these very grand and kind of like realistic and kind of emotionally intense games, but a really kind of cute, fun one is Pokemon. Choosing your starter doesn't, have any dictation on the game. The only direct effect it has is who your rival has.
Mm-hmm.
But
Bulbasaur is the best starter.
that's a fact, and you
Yeah.
can fight both of us if you disagree. No, but I mean, but it makes you feel more attached to your character and to your Pokemon. Is the fact that you get to choose, which I think is really sweet.
We can't all be Ash. He just, got to have Pikachu, whatever.
For no reason. Wasn't he left with him? Like, he was like, this is the last Pokemon we have.
That's
Sucks
anime,
for you.
though. That's not games. Okay. Apologies also if I got anything wrong on the Infamous front. I literally haven't played the game since I was like 12.
And I know nothing, so I can't correct you.
But don't get me wrong, they're good games. If you choose the bad route, though, your jacket looks less cool. So just don't do it.
Damn.
Also, just don't be a bad person.
Don't be a bad person or else you're going to be ugly.
Or else you're going to be ugly. Okay.
Oh my god. Okay, so the next little thing we're going to talk about is choices that are embedded in the game and it does not give you a clear-cut pick one option. And the only real favorite example I could think of was the best game ever created.
Debatable.
Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley does not give you choices, but
it gives me anxiety. But go ahead, continue.
Stardew Valley teaches you time management, which I think
I already know time management,
which is amazing. I love attempting to speed run Stardew Valley because there's no ending. It's just however fast you can get your shit together. But a great kind of choice that I think is really interesting is just who you get to marry. Like, that's it. Like, there's never an option that's like, would you like Sebastian or Abigail? It's just like, you build relationships over time, and then once you get to a certain level with any of them, you can date all of them at once, by the way, which I've done, and it's amazing.
Dang.
Well, you get the great thing about getting to know, we were talking a little bit about this in Night in the Woods, but the more you get to know them, the more you're rewarded because you get cutscenes, you get to learn more about their lives, and you get more invested in playing the game. You want to know more about these characters because they're all sweet and they're all nice, good people. And I think that a very interesting embedded choice is just who you get to marry. You can date all these people. You never have to make that choice, actually, which is interesting. You don't just choose in the beginning who do you want to be your partner. But you can go throughout the game, learn more about them, and then eventually you can just choose to marry someone. You can also choose to have kids or not have kids, which is interesting. And that is a pick one option. That just doesn't happen randomly, obviously. But
not like the board game Life, which can tear families apart in real life.
True.
And that's life.
And that's life.
Continue, though.
How many times can I say life in the past 5 seconds?
Life is strange like that.
Oh my god. Life is strange like life. But I don't know. I'm very interested in the fact that Stardew Valley obviously isn't a choice-based game, but you do choose every single day when you wake up how to manage your time. And I think that's a really interesting concept.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's it.
And that's it. That's the end of it. No.
That's it. No. I love Stardew Valley, and I love choosing how to manage my time because I do it a different way every time.
I don't want to get into like life sims because we're gonna do a whole different
episode
on that, but like I want to touch a little bit on the greatest game series. I keep saying things are the greatest game of all time.
Can't pick just one.
Okay, the Sims games.
Correct.
Very fun, first of all. Second of all, everything you do in Sims could kill your sim, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, that's
but
really
also
good.
it's also another example of you don't have to make these huge life-changing decisions if you don't want to.
Yeah.
And a lot of choice-based games do that too much. And we've talked about this continually over each segment.
Yeah.
But nothing in the real world is black and white.
No,
you're not gonna get 2 paths and get to walk down one. You could turn around, you know? Oh god, that sounded really cheesy.
Unlike real life, however, you will not die if you don't pee.
Actually, you will die if you set fire to your sim or don't build a ladder in the pool. They're getting better. Will Wright is getting better and better at not letting you destroy your Sims' lives. Okay, we're not going to talk about that, though, because we have a whole nother episode about that.
Yes,
and I could talk about Sims.
True. Well, I think I was going to say something about Sims, but I seem to have forgotten. It's okay.
All right.
I forgive no one. All right, so I can't have a choice, based podcast without mentioning Undertale because duh. But which is very timely because that new game just released, which I'll talk a little bit about.
I just want to say I love indie devs.
Yeah,
so much.
Oh my god. Okay.
And also like condolences to the Telltale folks.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
Everyone who works at Rockstar. Like we're not going to get too into that stuff, but like games should be unionized. Yeah.
Please.
Go ahead.
No, for real though. It's very important. But Undertale, oh man. Okay, so Toby Fox is a genius, and I'm not just saying that. But this whole thing that I want to talk about Undertale is like every single little choice affects the game drastically, which makes for this really chaotic game. I mean, Undertale's crazy. I mean, the fan base is wild, and everything about this game is like, it's just bonkers. Like, and the more you play it, the more bonkers it gets.
Yeah, I've only played it once, and I played it once directly when I got it about 3 years ago. So I don't remember much of the choices that I made, other than that I chose not to kill anyone.
Yeah, which is most people's first run.
Yeah. I generally choose that in games too, which I think is something we could talk about. Like,
that's true.
As people, what route do you take? Because I know people who always play the evil route, and I'm the kind of boring person who never plays the evil route.
No, that's actually very interesting. I also never play the evil route because I get way too emotionally invested in
I just feel guilty.
Yeah, I get too emotionally invested in things that don't matter and not emotionally invested enough in my real life. And so in video games, I cannot hurt anything. I cannot make anyone unhappy. It drains me emotionally to make someone in a video game sad or to kill them. I just can't do it.
If you don't help the king in Fallout New Vegas get a new brain for his weird cyborg dog Rex, you're objectively a bad person. I'm sorry. First of all, okay, we'll continue with Undertale though. I'll stop talking about Fallout New Vegas.
Oh my god.
Mandy's looking at their phone.
No, sorry. I thought my friend was texting me about the podcast, but he wasn't. That's rude. Yeah, I don't know. With Undertale, I never did the evil route. Or just the route that you kill people. I don't think that's inherently
evil. It's called Genocide Run, though.
Well.
So, I'm gonna go ahead and throw away that last comment.
Okay, never mind. I totally forgot it was called Genocide. Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah. You heard it here, folks.
That's perhaps a little evil. No, but I think actually the first time that I played neutral because I accidentally killed something in the beginning, which most people do. And then after I played neutral, I believe that I played pacifist, and it drastically affects the second time you play the game, which is, I don't think I've ever played a game that's done that, personally.
Would you say that Undertale has the biggest, changes, the game changes the most based on your choices of all the games you've talked about?
Yes, definitely. I would say absolutely, mostly because, I don't know, Toby Fox is very interesting because the writing he does in the game is, I don't know, sometimes for me it's a little hit or miss, with the comedy, but you can't deny that, the way that he makes you feel so insane, insignificant, he makes you feel just garbage, every time you make a choice, I don't know, with Undertale, essentially the gist is, you go through the world and you can choose to have a neutral run, a pacifist run, or a genocide run, and it drastically affects the way people treat you. Over time, if you've played the genocide run, enemies will stop attacking you because they run away. Which I think is very interesting, because then the thing that the character have chosen to do the most, you no longer can do, which is very interesting.
And that's more, sort of, I don't want to say feedback. I can't remember the word.
Well, I mean, it's the karma that you were talking about.
Yeah, that's more realistic consequence of your actions than like
if you start killing a bunch of people, people aren't gonna want to fight you.
No, that's not how. I mean, that's more realistic to me than. Well, I'm not even gonna say your outfit changing, but that's more realistic to me even than you just don't get to talk to certain people.
Right.
It's like people around you sort of learn who you are.
Yeah, they adapt based on who you are. Yeah, and it's very interesting. I don't know, that's just that whole game. And once you beat the game on any run, if you play the second time, it starts out very normally. You're like, oh, I'm just gonna replay. I'm gonna do a different route this time. But it remembers, and Sans makes sure to let you know. He's like, I remember what you did. Like, that's right, bitch.
Like, scary.
Sans is terrifying.
First of all.
And I'm not just saying that because he's a meme. Like, I'm serious.
It is scary. That was a hard battle.
Yeah. No, but, like, I just think that kind of writing is very interesting. I also don't know how he did it, technically. Like, so that, the game literally changes after you play it the first time. Like, that's crazy. I've never seen that in a game before. I would love recommendations of other games. But, I think if we're talking about choice-based games, as advertised as choice-based games, I feel like tend to not actually matter. And Undertale does not advertise itself as a choice-based game at all. I don't think Undertale advertises itself as anything.
I think Undertale just advertises itself as Undertale.
Yeah, no, seriously. But, I mean, it's like, I said in the beginning, every single little thing that you do matters in that game. Like, even just, like, insignificant stuff. Even the comedic relief, like, matters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which I think is, like, I don't know, it's just the whole point of that game is that everything you do matters.
I think that's following through on your decision to make a choice-based game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a great point. If you're gonna make something that's choice-based, you gotta commit. You gotta make the player feel like trash when they, like, make their decisions. Well, or make them feel great.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different tiers of choice-based, and I don't know. I don't feel like you need to feel as a game dev, and that we both make games too.
Yeah.
You don't have to feel like because there's choices in the game, you have to market it as a choice-based game.
No, you definitely don't. There's lots of games that don't.
Yeah, and there's so many games now, like walking simulators and that have choices in them that aren't choice-based games, and those choices still really affect the game.
Yeah.
But they don't have to be. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like a buzzword kind of way to sell games almost.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that, we've kind of come to the conclusion that a lot of choices that can enhance gameplay are not necessarily choices you realize you're making, or choices that are black and white. Because it's not how real life works, and because that's not how real life works, you don't emotionally connect with that kind of system.
Yeah, and again, even if it's a game where you're playing as a cartoon animal.
No, yeah.
That's not real life, but games are more effective to me if they can make you emotionally feel like you're immersed in this world and you're a part of it.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was watching a movie when I played Until Dawn.
Yeah, it just feels like you're I think that is probably the reason why Let's Plays are more interesting than playing the game. Yeah. It's because it usually is like you're watching a movie.
And even with games like Skyrim is my least favorite Elder Scrolls game. Because it was just, to me, it lacked all of the color and flavor and weirdness of Oblivion and Morrowind. Not because I had less choices. Sorry, the computer just... Oh, hello. Not because it had less choices, just because it didn't have as many interesting choices that you could make. And you couldn't be as funny, and you couldn't be as weird, and it wasn't as glitchy. There wasn't as much kind of charm to it.
Yeah.
And another thing, like Tales from the Borderlands felt super warm to me because characters were allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And you were allowed to make mistakes as the character, and it wouldn't destroy the game. It would just change the game.
Yeah.
Just a little bit in one aspect.
Totally. And I think that all kinds of different types of choices are effective. Like, whether or not it's one choice that you make in the beginning, or if it's subtle choices you make along the way, I think that they're all effective. I did also want to mention Deltarune, which came out, yesterday.
Yeah, Mandy was playing it at lunch.
I can't stop playing that game. It also just takes me forever to play games because I have to look at every single object
I'm
in
not
every
like
single
that.
room.
Not me.
But if you don't want spoilers for Deltarune, then go away.
That's rude.
Just leave. No. But I did respect the 24-hour rule. On the website, it asks you for 24 hours after the game is released, don't talk about it. But it's been more than 24 hours. Actually, I think it came out 2 days ago. I can't remember. But in the beginning, if you haven't played this again, you really should play it for yourself. It's free. You can download it on deltarune.com, I think is what it is. I sound like an advertisement for Toby Fox.
You do really sound. But again, indie devs know that not everyone can afford $60 games.
No, yeah, and like this game is free, and honestly, for a free game, it's wild. Like it's so like I can't even say it's worth it because you're not like sacrificing anything except your time. But it's really a beautiful game. In the beginning, you choose. It asks you to pick a face very slowly, and then asks you to pick a body for your vessel to inhabit, and then legs. And then it asks you to pick some of its favorite things, and it's being very gentle as it tells you this. It says, now choose your creature's name, and now choose the creator's name. This is how it sounded in my head as I was playing. And then after that, it cuts, and it just says, you know that in this game your choices don't matter. And then it just erases your character, and you start the game. Which I think is wild.
All right.
It is drastically different from the kind of methods in Undertale, I think. But also in a way, it's like almost predictable. I don't know. Like when it happened, I was like, of course. Like Toby Fox had to give us a few years so that we could all forget how much he like fucked with us, so that we could play this and give the sense of like safety, like the false sense of safety we had in this cute little game. Like make your character, and then Toby Fox ripped it away. But I think, like, it literally says in the beginning, your choices don't matter in this game. But they do. Your choices do matter in the game, which I think is wild. And the second character that you meet, he's very sweet and kind and gentle, kind of in the same vein as the beginning, which automatically makes me suspicious. But he tells you, well, I think your choices matter. And then you kind of have the same method of, you can choose to be passive or aggressive. And
passive aggressive?
Oh. Damn. You can choose to act or you can choose to fight. And I have not beat this game yet. I have chosen to act instead of fight, so I don't know if there's different endings. I would assume there is, but I also know that this is not a finite game. It's part one of a couple, at least. So I'm interested to see how that plays out, and if he manages to somehow link what you've done in each part all together, because that would be wild.
That's
but also I kind of expect it at this point.
Telltale was really great at that. Like playing Borderlands, you got to click through at the end and see what percentage of players made.
Yes, I love that about Wolf Among Us.
I love just looking at the person, like the 23% who chose to kick the poor. I'm like, who the heck? Like, who are you?
Who chose?
What cruel.
What did you think would come from that? Like,
it's funny. It's very enjoyable, but it's also just a really interesting. I don't know. It's a fun thing, and I think.
Yeah.
I'm always curious how they manage to link that stuff together.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but just what types of people make decisions in games.
Yeah.
I don't know. We were talking about that, but I just can't be mean in a game.
No, I feel guilty about it.
I think that's why
I go to bed and I feel bad.
I think that's why everyone was so struck by Glass Him. Because I keep bringing this up. Because people people hate this guy. He sucks, but they didn't want to bonk him on the head with some, a shot glass.
If you don't fist bump Loaderbot, don't even try to talk to me.
Oh my god.
Don't even
choose
look
to not
at me.
fist bump someone?
Oh, there's some mean choices
That's
you can
really
make.
sad.
And he's like a nice robot.
But I mean, that's so effective about games, right? Is that, that kind of thing emotionally affects you outside of the game. And that's the whole point.
Yeah. I think I'm going to bring up two kind of last topics, but one of them is playing choice-based games that allow you to choose, who you can be in a relationship with or what you look like.
Right.
Is huge for, queer people.
Yeah, that's true.
And for me, that's one of the biggest draws of RPGs, and I think why I liked them so much as a kid was because I didn't have to play as whatever boring male white, the protagonist in most video games.
Yeah.
I could create who I was playing, and I could decide who they were gonna like.
Yeah.
And I think that's, it's really freeing, and I think it gives you the opportunity to create the representation that you want.
Yeah.
But not all choice-based games have that option.
Yeah.
But a lot of these games on this list have a lot of LGBT characters in them.
Yeah, they
which
do.
I think is interesting.
Mhm.
And not something we necessarily will go into right now. But I think it's...
Well, I think that brings up the interesting idea of even, I don't know, like you playing a game, and then you get to choose. Like, I guess Life is Strange would be a good example of this in kind of the reverse way that I'm thinking about it. But, you play as Max, and there are lots of characters of different genders that you meet throughout the game. And I think you can even choose to go out on a date with a boy at one point. But you end up with Chloe regardless of what you do, which I think is very interesting, and which is one reason why I do respect Life is Strange in that respect, is because they kind of flip the norm on its head of like, oh, your main protagonist is a girl or your main protagonist is a guy, and you make all these choices in the game, but you end up with the like opposite gender because like that's your love interest, but you don't get to choose. And for queer people, that isn't a choice that you get to make, so there's no point. So I think that that's really interesting about Life is Strange, is that, it kind of, I don't know, there's a role reversal there of like, yeah, you don't get to choose. Max is gay. Yeah. I said so.
Yeah, I don't know. And then, I mean, going back to Sims just briefly, one of the best things I think about Sims 4 is that they took away gender as even an option.
Yeah.
And that was like, if I had
you can choose how to use the toilet, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, you literally choose like just traits that you have.
Yeah.
That maybe or like what and they even have like the sliding scale of what your voice sounds like is the same no matter what visually you look like. And I don't know, I think games that, and in all Sims games, gender is kind of meaningless. You can be with whoever you can fuck the Grim Reaper in Sims. So
thank God.
Of course gender doesn't exist. Which I think is perfect and good and great. But I don't know, some stuff like that is something that has a big impact on me now, and I wish had been around more when I was younger playing games. And I think games like Fallout New Vegas, where there are queer relationships in the game that you can engage in, definitely were like stepping stones to that, and are really important and shouldn't be disregarded in that sense, just because they're not advertised as dating sims or as games made for
dating.
Yeah, or queer people.
Yeah. Well, I think a good example of that is Stardew Valley, like I mentioned before. The creator didn't have to, put queer representation in it. It's a fine game without it, but it's just that one little thing that kind of makes it more accessible to people who that means a lot to. It's a choice that you get to make, and sometimes you don't get to make those kinds of choices in your life as a queer person. And so the fact that you can do it in a video game means a lot to people. You can get married, Stardew Valley is one of the first games, maybe it is the first, where I saw two women getting married.
I think the first one I played where I saw two women getting married is Tales from the Borderlands.
Yeah, and like, I saw it happen for the first time, and of course this character like looks like me, so I'm like, oh, crying. But like, you don't realize how much it means to you until it happens.
Yeah.
That choice was put in there so that I could have the experience that I wanted to have in that game.
And there's something really special about you being the one who instigates that in the game, and not like watching it happen. Yeah. Which in Tales from the Borderlands you do kind of just watch it happen, but you have played as Athena in past games if you made the right decision when playing the pre-sequel. So it feels special. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
And just briefly before we end, I'm not gonna go into Persona. Okay. I played about
I don't know anything about Persona.
15 to 20 hours of the latest Persona game, and I just barely scraped through the first dungeon. So, those games are probably the most heavily choice-based games I've ever played, and I'm not even gonna talk about them. Okay?
I
Because
feel
if you
like-
answer a question wrong on a math test, you're gonna die in a dungeon later, and that makes zero sense to me.
Oh my god. I feel like if you've played 20 hours of a game, you should probably know what the game is.
Yeah, I have a lot of beefs with Persona. I really enjoy that game, but if I don't eat a giant hamburger, I still want to be able to beat a certain boss.
That's wild.
So Atlas
That's-
Games, you better be writing this down because
That's perhaps not a great choice
yeah,
system.
it could be for some people, but it's not for me.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've never played Chrono Trigger, but I've heard that Chrono Trigger is very much like that as well.
I think Atlas may make both those games.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
I've
though.
only ever heard other people talk about Chrono Trigger, so I can't kind of go into
And
depth.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, I can't go into depth about it, but it's an old RPG that, actually, the old Sierra games are also a great example of this. It's not like it says choose A or B, but you have to pick up, like, a tiny key card on a spaceship in order to use it, like, to get to the final boss.
Oh my god.
That's the whole point of Sierra games, which I think it's like so weird. It's like so hard and incredible. Like, how is a kid supposed to beat that or no? I mean,
They're not.
they're not. Yeah, they're
I
not.
I don't think I completed a game until I was 18 years old.
Literally, yeah. No, but I mean,
I beat one game, and I'm pretty sure it was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for PC.
oh my god. Yeah.
Bonus Bean Room, baby.
I mean,
oh
if you
wait,
could-
that was the third one. Never mind. Sorry,
If
my
you-
bad.
Sorry, all you Harry Potter fans.
Oh.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just choices.
Choices. This one goes out to all the people who played Oregon Trail and died of dysentery.
Oh my god. I've never played Oregon Trail. I think that probably is about it.
Yeah, that wraps up episode 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, and next week we'll dive into a different topic.
Yeah, for sure.
Eventually we'll get to that life sim
Yes.
games episode, which will be really interesting.
Yes. We have lots of stuff planned. Very excited. If you're tuning in, anyone live, then thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably it.
All
All
right.
right. Bye.
That can't be our sign off. It's really creepy. Talk to you later.